This is so awful.
There are 7 things that can cause you to have numb hands on a bicycle. In today's video, we're going to go through all of them, and James is currently experiencing them all at once. You can stop now.
Most off-the-shelf bikes come with handlebars that are way too wide. So if you consider that the average man that we measure in here measures between 39 and 41 centimeters across the chromium process, look at the video down here for a video on how to measure for your handlebars. If you think about the average size handlebar that comes on an average size bike is 42 centimeters, rendering 42 centimeter too wide for most people. If you consider this, nobody stands like this. John Wayne, maybe. So why would we want to ride a bicycle like this? The common compensation for a handlebar that is too wide is for us to roll the wrist like so as a means of aligning the wrist with the shoulder blade. What this typically does is put undue pressure on the ulnar nerve, and that typically cuts off circulation to the hands. Slight disclaimer with this video. Fundamentally, numb hands is caused by having too much weight on the hands. All of these things combined will typically cause issue, but the number one, the key here is to relieve the pressure from the hands. You shouldn't have too much weight on your hands. Handlebar width is a major driver. If it's too wide, then it can result in numbness, but if you've got a pretty good position in the first place, then it renders the handlebar choice less important. Due to the nature of how we like our bikes to look, we typically like long stems, and most road cyclists seem to want to be contortionists. An excessive reach to the handlebars can also drive excessive pressure on the hands, which in turn will result in numbness. So what we want to be doing is, well, frankly, we don't want to be doing a plank and riding a bicycle at the same time. The further the handlebars are away from you, the more you're going to have to potentially engage your core. Actually, there are elements of your QL that aid in sustaining your torso angle, so it isn't all about core. Frankly, if the reach is too long, that's almost always going to result in excessive weight on the hands. Q, numbness. You can reduce the reach in many ways. You can reduce it with optimizing the control location on the handlebar. You can change the handlebar. Not all reaches are the same on handlebars. So the reach is the distance from where the control is located to the center of the ball. So this distance here. This metric can change by up to 50 millimeters, so that can alter the reach from the saddle to the controls by up to 50 mil. You can change the stem. You can also play with saddle setback. Very often used as a means of altering the reach. Something that is worth considering is that when you alter the horizontal placement of the saddle in space, you influence weight distribution. So the further forward you run the saddle, the more you tend to throw the weight of the rider into the front of the bike. There are considerations that need to be made when altering saddle setback, particularly rider morphology. So if you've got an individual with a very large head, they're going to typically need more saddle setback. Riders with long torsos, like myself, again, more saddle setback, or riders with impinged hips and shorter torsos, less setback. However, if you're going to slam the saddle really, really far forward on the rails, it's going to throw all of your weight into the front of the bike. So if this is something that you've done recently, then it might be worth thinking about running that saddle slightly further back, but what you might need to do at the same time is reduce the reach accordingly. One of the very common changes carried out to saddles to improve saddle comfort or relieve gentle issues is to increase tilt. Now, when you apply a lot of tilt to a saddle, you create a slope. What happens when you put something on a slope? What tends to happen is you fall off the nose of the saddle and you brace with your hands. It's throwing all of your weight into the front of the bike. Try and keep your saddle as level as possible. If that is causing you issues, have a go at lowering it. When the saddle is too high, it typically results in a postural engagement of the hamstrings and has the impact of throwing you into the front of the bike. Frankly, saddle height, I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about, and it is one of the primary causes for pain in cycling. I'm talking knee pain, foot issues, numb feet, all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, don't raise it higher. I can't even get on that. Okay, this is what my customer feel. Oh my god, I'm going to really hurt myself here. You fucking asshole.
Come on.
When the saddle height's excessive, it tends to result in throwing the rider into the front of the bike. So again, have a go at lowering a little bit. Only a little bit at a time, 5-10 mil at a time, and see if that improves things. Saddle selection is less important than people make it out to be. There isn't one saddle to rule them all. You can probably ride a number of saddles with a reasonable degree of functionality and comfort. However, if the saddle is too wide and it results in you gravitating to the nose in order to clear the width, or if it's too narrow, or frankly, if it's just the wrong shape and it doesn't provide your pelvis with sufficient support, then you're going to end up with too much weight on your hands. What we're really looking for is a 75 to 25% split between saddle and front end. So we're looking for a 75% of your weight to be through the saddle and supported through the pelvis, and 25% through the front of the bike. I mean, if I'm honest with you, realistically, if you're riding at threshold, your torso should be weightless. Not always achievable with everybody, but for most people, you should be able to take your hands off the handlebars, not change your saddle position, and not really change your cadence either. Contrary to many common beliefs, I'm actually reducing saddle width these days, and something I find, and it's mostly thanks to big American bike manufacturers for measuring sit bones. I don't feel that sit bone measurement has a huge amount of relevance, and what we do tend to find is that it tends to result in an excessive saddle width, and as a result, when you have a saddle that's too wide for you, typically what riders do is they catch the wings of the saddle here and here, and it's human nature to get away from that, so one way of remedying it is to sit further forward onto the saddle. My best selling saddle is the Salitalia SLR Boost S3. I sell these things like hotcakes, and strangely, curiously, it's one of the narrowest saddles on the market, less than 130 millimeters wide across the widest point. We sell the wider version, and we sell the narrower version at a ratio of about 10 to 1. Loads of pressure relief, so it's got a much bigger pressure relief channel, so there's a much higher likelihood of you actually hitting it, particularly for individuals that kind of list off to one side and don't necessarily hit the pressure relief channel 100%. It's a relatively short saddle, but I don't really know exactly what it is, but almost everybody I put on one of these absolutely loves it, myself included, and you actually as well. You quite like these, don't you? Yes. The general consensus with crank length is that shorter is better. My finding suggests otherwise. You're not always looking for shorter. Furthermore, shorter crank length does not equal higher cadence. Better functionality equals higher cadence. That can be achieved with a longer crank. So if you've got a very, very tall rider, riding 165mm crank, I wouldn't mind betting you got a lot of weight on your hands. One of the things I find, and I'm not entirely sure why, but when you have a crank length that is too short or insufficient, then it tends to result in the rider sort of spilling over the crank and falling into the front of the bike. If you're a taller than average rider and you have a relatively short crank, 170, 165 or even shorter millimeter crank on your bike, that could be the reason why you're getting numb hands.
There you go, that's your 7 things. Give that a go if you're getting numb hands on the bike. Thank you for watching this episode of Bike Fit Tuesdays. I'll put a link to James's shop in the description down below if you'd like to book a fit with him. If you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes of Bike Fit Tuesdays, put them in the comments, and thanks for watching.